We are storytellers by nature, sharing with others what we experience, perceive, and believe of life, our joys, adventures, our losses. We tell ourselves stories as well. Some leave us trapped by false beliefs and self-doubt. But there are also stories of persisting, exploring, and rising above. Stories of uncovering the truth, enabling powerful transformation and triumph. These are those stories. These are your stories. Hello, folks. Welcome. It is time for And So It Is, Stories of Truth, Transformation, and Triumph. My name is Zoe DeMuro. I'm a religious science practitioner with the New Thought Media Network. I'm a transformational coach as well. You know, my ministry and my mission are both to help people co-create their most authentic and most fulfilling life experience. Now, normally this is when I would tell you about my guest, but today I'm going to be doing things a little bit differently. So, see, I decided to step back from the interviews for this one episode, which I have titled Ex Libris et Ex Umbra, which is, frankly, it's a really terrible Latin play on words. See, the word ex, E-X, means out of. So, ex libris, out of the library. Ex umbra, out of the shadow. My two themes for today's episode. In all honesty, the format change was really more of a timing issue, not necessarily a content issue, though. So, see, I was very blessed to be able to take a wonderful vacation with my wife to celebrate our birthdays. It was my 75th birthday, and it was her... No, there's no way I'm telling her age online. I mean, come on, seriously. Anyway, we were also celebrating our 19th anniversary. So between scheduling changes and, other issues, I wasn't able to get my guest lined up for this month as I had hoped. But speaking of anniversaries, I never did get around to celebrating the anniversary of this show. Well, suppose I'm only 7 months late, or maybe I'm 5 months early for our second anniversary. In any event, I decided that this was a good time to speak about some of the things I've experienced and learned as a result of these interviews. And assuming that my voice holds out, I also want to respond to a number of requests I received regarding source materials and books, which I have found to be exceptionally worthwhile in the exploration of transformation. So first, the quote-unquote sort of anniversary, but it's really more about my observations part, since I have the time and the space to celebrate a little bit here. And when I say celebrate, I don't mean slapping myself on the back for keeping this going. I mean, or managing the scheduling, because that's always fun. I mean, celebrating the transformations and the triumphs the folks I've had the honor of interviewing have brought into their lives. And of course, celebrating the people themselves for their openness and their willingness to express their experiences. And in doing so, how they made it clear that we are, each of us, powerful co-creators of our life experience. I've interviewed people who have experienced abuse, addiction, loss of loved ones, divorce, severe illnesses, abandonment, poverty, homelessness. So many ways in which they felt diminished, forgotten, discarded, denigrated, defeated, and on and on. But they were able to work through these seemingly insurmountable circumstances and conditions, not work around them, but work through them. they didn't merely survive, they literally triumphed. Some of the transformations and triumphs wouldn't necessarily be seen as noteworthy to the world at large. I mean, I think of, for example, this is not really an example of a transformation, but just something very simple. When I had surgery on my knee, the first time I was able to pull on my sock by myself, it was like, oh, it was a victory. Nobody else would think that was a victory unless they had gone through something kind of similar. But the transformations that we're talking about here, these were things that allowed people tremendous, tremendous growth in their lives. And in some cases, allowed them to literally be able to live, to want to live. So they might not have been something that everybody would think as being out of the ordinary in their own lives. But to each of these wondrous, wondrous souls, they enabled a greater and more fulfilling experience of life than they ever could have imagined. Let's see. Hey, Wayne, good to see you. Nice to have you here. You know what? Let me put up this banner. There we go. There we go. Okay, let me see. So, I'm thinking that these people were miracles. Does the miracle sound too audacious for what they accomplished, for who they became, or, well, more accurately and even more profoundly, who they realized they were all along? Personally, I don't think so. Especially when you consider that the word miracle is essentially describing something of wonder, something wonderful, right? So it's easy to think of miracles as being something otherworldly or beyond human capacity. But I think we lose something if we relegate miracles to those lofty and frankly, near impossible heights. Miracles don't have to be so rare as to be steeped in mystery and mysticism. There is a miracle in the sound of a child's laughter, in the sunrise, the sunset, in a helping hand extended, and in the hand that receives that help. These are all wonders, wondrous, wonderful. Now, why am I going on and on about miracles? Because I discovered in speaking to viewers about this show, it was fairly common that while they certainly felt that they had changed or even transformed in some way, they were very reluctant to think of themselves as having triumphed or that what they had accomplished was in any way miraculous. But isn't being able to break free from addiction miraculous? Isn't overcoming crushing doubts and fears miraculous? Isn't coming back from despair and the feeling that there is no reason to go on, isn't that miraculous? I want to invite you to try something. See, this is what happens when I don't have guests on my show. I do all sorts of strange things. So anyway, if you've never done this before, if it's been a while, give this a shot. Take a look at yourself in the mirror and say this. No, don't say it. Declare, looking at your own image, you are a miracle. That doesn't resonate with you? How about this one? You are amazing. Still too much? How about you are working it? Even you are willing to explore is a great place to start. But I want you to be able to look in that mirror and see the co-creator of your life experience. I want you to be able to see that being that powerful, having that much capacity, ability, is truly miraculous. If you don't feel that miraculous at this particular point in your life for whatever reason, know this. I was once working with someone who was only willing to say at the beginning of their journey from limitation to triumph, he said, I am willing to be willing to explore. That is fine. All right. Wherever it is that you are, that's where you're going to start. Now, I wanted to go through all of this because I've seen far too many people who downplay or flout out, don't even see how far they've progressed, how much they've grown, how many falsehoods they've released, and how many truths they've embraced. Look, I get it. When I ran races, I never said how great it felt to know that I had covered 99% of the distance. Nope. But I saw that finish line and I was focused on that remaining 1%. That's fine for a race. It makes sense, right? Because the whole purpose is crossing that line. But life, a life that allows for learning, that allows for growth, a life that embraces compassion. Well, a person living that life celebrates every step forward, every lesson learned, and still looks forward to more. It's fascinating when you take a moment to consider that we come into this world with virtually no physical abilities, no understanding of ourselves. The world around us, we're essentially a blank slate. I mean, we need to be cared for, we need to be nurtured if we're going to survive. And we literally build an understanding of who we are. We build an understanding of where we fit into our surroundings and how we will interact. We create parts of our identity. We effectively inherit parts of our identity. And quite honestly, we're force-fed parts of our identity as well. And then as we grow, we either accept or reject parts. And then we can live our life as that individual consciousness that we have decided upon. But throughout life, we have opportunities to change, to learn, to grow, to explore. Opportunities to discern what we believe and what we value. We're not static beings. There is constant change, physically as well as emotionally and mentally. In essence, we are constantly transforming. Think about that, constantly transforming. So my intent for this show is to provide people with an understanding that not only is change possible, but that getting through, not around what we see as obstacles, is possible. Now, to do so often requires us to explore our shadow. And this is our umbra part. What I mean by shadow is perfectly described in a book I'll speak about later called Shadow Work, A Spiritual Path to Healing and Integration by the incredible Michelle Wadley. I actually want to read just a little part from the foreword for that book. All right. This is what she says. If I can find my... If I could find my glasses. Okay. So this is what she wrote. In the journey towards self-discovery and personal growth, there exists a realm often obscured, concealed in the recesses of our subconscious, a realm known as the shadow. The importance of shadow work cannot be overstated. It is an expedition into the depths of our psyche, where we encounter the aspects of ourselves that have long been overlooked or consciously ignored. We'll talk a bit more about that later. Now that is a courageous exploration. That's why I celebrate those brave souls who allowed me the honor of sharing their journey in literally their own words and in their own voices. I celebrate their resolve to show us that each of us has within us the ability to become free and to live a far more fulfilling life. There's a line from the poet Rumi that reads, "Every story is us." Rumi was addressing the one divine source of all life, but it goes much deeper than that acknowledgement. It's the realization that we share, in essence, all that happens through our interconnectedness and its effect on our greater consciousness. And the more we are aware of that, the greater the ascendance of our consciousness. Every story is us, indeed. So when I talk about this show and I say that this is your show, that these are your stories, that is absolutely true. And the story of each and every one of us is shared in some way through our greater consciousness. Our ability to look at different conditions, different circumstances, and to see how people acted and reacted. That's why we have this show. Now, earlier I had said that the title for this episode included that phrase, ex umbra, which is basically translated as out of the shadow. But there are still two interpretations of that. Out of meaning something that was extracted from, but also coming out from. It's valuable to consider both of these interpretations. On the one hand, when we're able to divest ourselves of our false beliefs, we are coming out from under the burden of those beliefs. We're becoming free from the prison that those beliefs kept us in. On the other hand, though, there is tremendous value in that shadow, that dark night of the soul, as it's sometimes referred to, because it is in the exploration of that shadow that we find the origin of many of the beliefs that limit us. Okay, voice is going to hold on. One of the persistent and powerful traits of all the people I've worked with and interviewed is their ability to find the blessings, the lessons, which would not have been known or understood without exploration. Their courage to do that, their faith that they could do so and not become mired in the past experience, were key to their success and their eventual transformation. So many people I've spoken to have been afraid to look at that shadow. I remember one person who had uncovered all of these different things that they were able to work through, they were able to heal from, said, as happy as I am for what I have discovered, I worry about what else I might discover. There's no reason to worry about it. We peel away the things that hide our truth. We peel away the things that hide our origin. We peel away the things that we have brought to ourselves, the things we have used to hide things from ourselves, as well as the things that other people have given us to hide. It's like, oh no, never talk about that. Nobody wants to hear about that aspect of your life. No one's going to accept you if they know that about you. Not true. Not true. Maybe some people won't. But hey, if I told you that an ex-addict, someone who was willing to lie and steal and cheat, someone who is willing to throw away his life and tried a number of times to do so, would be here today speaking to you. Would you believe that? I'm coming up on, 45 years of sobriety? Yeah, 45 years in April. You never know. Think of it this way. We're talking about healing. Okay, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about healing. And if we want to heal from a physical wound, we need to remove it, whatever bandage we might have on it. We need to go beyond the surface, right? It's kind of like when you weed a garden, you have to get to the root of the weed. Otherwise, all you're doing is just clipping the stem at the surface and, 2 weeks later, boom, there's the weed again. So getting at the source of what was happening in the wound, clearing out any infection, whatever it might be, getting it to the point where we can heal is critical. It is not fun necessarily. It might be painful, but it is necessary. Nona L. Brooks states that spiritual healing is realization. Realization that it does not bring about anything, but realizes what is already there. There's an expression that you'll hear in New Thought circles oftentimes, something along the lines of, there is nothing to be healed, only revealed. Ernest Holmes, who was the founder of religious science, science of mind, phrased it this way. He said, there is no process of healing, but there is generally a process in healing. This process is the time and effort which we undergo in our realization of truth. In our realization of truth. Truth, transformation, and triumph. Exactly. Let me see what's going on over here. Oh, Wayne, you have a lot of things to say there, don't you, my friend? All right. Well, I just want to take a short break here. Grab a sip of coffee, and we'll be right back. So just hang on. All right, and we are back. So we are looking at our ex libris portion of today's show, out of the library. So in case you're tuning in late, we started with the idea that this actually had started as an anniversary show, and it never really happened that way. So I wanted to talk about what has gone on over the past 18 months that we've been doing this show. And I also now wanted to move into another portion of the show where I'm going to talk about a number of the books that I have found to be exceptionally helpful in understanding just how to become free from the limitations of false beliefs and how to transform my life experience. So each book I've chosen speaks to me in a profound way. Some of them build one on the other. Some provide very, very different prospects, very different perspectives, and very different approaches. There's a phrase in the Tao Te Ching that's best translated as, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath one's feet," which means right within ourselves. Okay? So it's not about what we see out there. It's not about the circumstances and the conditions out there. It's about what is inside. So that brings me to my first book. It's titled The Way In, Words of Wisdom from a New Thought Leader. And this is by Carol Carnes. When she used the word in for her title, Carol was speaking of inside our own spirit, our own best self. It's got chapters with names like change, choice, mindfulness, growth. I just can see how that would fit creativity, how it fits personal responsibility and transformation. So I want to read a very short selection from that to give you a sense of this book. She wrote, "Once we have chosen to live a certain way, follow a particular path, or explore a specific field, and we do so with joy and a sense that it is our thing to do, the necessary power arises in us as enthusiasm, curiosity, diligence, commitment, tenacity, confidence, and a desire to be seen and known as we truly are. If we do not do the thing, we lose power, and we will feel invisible and wonder whose life we are living. Fortunately, it is never too late to revive the power that makes all things new. It is inherent in right action. Do your thing, and the power shall know itself as you." I love that. That is just a wonderful beginning. If you need the confidence, that book definitely provides that. Next book is called The Power of Awareness. It's by Neville Goddard. I want to note that a number of the books I'm referring to are definitely steeped either in religion or metaphysics, and this is definitely one of them. So he quotes from the Bible, Romans 12:2. It says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." And he speaks to how we are limited by our assumptions, but set free by truth. Then, by bringing one's attention to the truth, one can form a new attitude and a real awakening of self. By the way, I should point out that at the end of the show, I'll put up a list of all of the books that I'm speaking about with the authors, in case you wanted to dig into these yourself. Okay, let's see. My next offering. Next offering is a twofer. These are both written by Louise Hay. First one is called You Can Heal Your Life. And the second is The Power Within You. They both focus on, as the title state, you, because you are powerful. Without a doubt, one of the most important takeaways from this show's episodes is that we are not victims of what happens to us. Yes, we experience setbacks, oftentimes highly damaging and seemingly unconquerable. But as I believe you've witnessed, you've watched this show, and what you might very well have witnessed in yourself, is that we can rise above, not in spite of what happens, but because of our willingness to address what has happened in our lives. Louise's books emphasize both aspects of dealing with these circumstances and conditions. Healing, of course, but also excelling. Because of the subsequent transformation brought about through our innate and exceptional capacity for choosing to define and craft our life experience. Let me see. I'll just read this little piece to you. This is from You Can Heal Your Life. It says, I now choose calmly and objectively to see my old patterns, and I am willing to make changes. I am teachable. I can learn. I am willing to change. I choose to react as though I have found a treasure when I discover something else to release. It's a really important phrase. I choose to react as though I have found a treasure when I discover something else to release. I see and feel myself changing moment by moment. Thoughts no longer have any power over me. Just absolutely beautiful. And from The Power Is Within You, in a chapter called Reprogramming Old Tapes, she says, by willing to take the first step, no matter how small it is, concentrate on the fact that you are willing to learn. Absolute miracles will happen. There's that word again. Miracles. I love it. I love it. And she goes on to say, in a section called Dissolving the Barriers, we want to know what is going on inside us so we can know what to let go. Instead of hiding our pain, we can release it totally. Instead of hiding our pain, we can release it totally. You know, there's a concept in Buddhism called the two arrows. The first arrow being the pain that comes from something that has happened to us. And the second arrow is the suffering that we bring to ourselves with the, how can this have happened? Why did this happen? And then the recounting again and again and again of the story of how terrible that was. Don't allow the two arrows. Okay, now, this brings me to another book, which is Dr. Tara Brach's book, Radical Acceptance. Embracing your life with the heart of a Buddha. Now, there's actually a small story here that I want to share from this book. And it speaks of a white tiger named Mohini, who had been kept for many years in a very typical situation for that time, an iron 12 by 12 foot cage, concrete floor. That was typical in a zoo. This particular zoo is in Washington, D.C. Eventually, they were able to move Mohini into a new habitat, one that had hills and trees, a pond, and room to roam and play. Sounds wonderful, right? But Mohini had become so used to her old home, she spent her remaining years simply pacing back and forth in the same 12-foot pattern. The story breaks my heart. Mohini had lost her ability to even imagine a freer existence. And so she had to remain in what was essentially a prison of her own making. Does this sound familiar? It certainly is for me. And it certainly sounds familiar to what I have heard so many people speak of. The chapter that story appeared in is called Awakening from the Trance, the Path of Radical Acceptance. Mohini became incapable of accepting anything other than what she had always known. But we have an entire world around us. We have many sources of information, of perspectives, of alternatives. If we accept them, if we choose to look beyond, if we are willing to accept the possibility, let alone the likelihood of a greater, more fulfilling life experience. There's a quote by Carl Rogers, brilliant Carl Rogers, who said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." So, in radical acceptance, there are chapters such as coming home to our body, opening our heart in the face of fear, and awakening compassion for others. These are just a few of the highlights of this incredible book, drawing on the principles from Buddhism, which so aptly and so beautifully apply to freedom and transformation. Radical Acceptance. Tara Brach. There's a book that I almost didn't include because it is definitely more about creativity than it is clearly about transformation. It's called Big Magic, Creative Living Beyond Fear. But I wanted to highlight something that the author of this book, Elizabeth Gilbert, she was the author of Eat, Pray, Love. This is something that she had said. Let's see, where is this? She says, when I talk about creative living here, please understand that I am not necessarily talking about pursuing a life that is professionally or exclusively devoted to the arts. No, I am speaking more broadly. I'm talking about living a life that is driven more strongly by curiosity than by fear. Now, that certainly applies when we're talking about transformation. And to be able to be creative, to be able to co-create our life experience, that is a key to transformation. Okay, let's see. The next book. This one is by Elizabeth Lesser. The title is Broken Open: How Difficult Times Can Help Us Grow. I want to highlight two early quotes that I found in this book. The first is from Anais Nin, who said, "And the time came when the risk to remaining a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom." Does that sound familiar? That feel familiar? The risk to remaining a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. And the second quote that she has that I really like, this is from Rainer Maria Rilke. He said, "In the difficulty are the friendly forces, the hands that work on us." I want to read a short passage from this book because it sets the tone for those of us who wonder just how a journey of transformation can change them. I know from my own life, I remember wondering whether the work that I would have to do to climb out of that deep, dark pit I found myself in was really worth it. This is what she wrote. The transformational journey is a voyage with 100 different names. The Odyssey, the Grail Quest, the Great Initiation, the Death and Rebirth process, the Supreme Battle, the Dark Night of the Soul, the Hero's Journey. All of these names describe the process of surrendering to a time of great difficulty, allowing the pain to break us open, and then being reborn, stronger, wiser, kinder. I have my own name for the quest, she goes on. I call it the Phoenix process, in honor of the mythic bird with golden plumage whose story had been told throughout the ages. The Egyptians called the bird the phoenix and believed that every now we'll get beyond that. Okay, knowing that a new way could be found only with the death of his worn-out habits, defenses, and beliefs, the phoenix sat in the flames and burned to death. Kind of grim. But then he rose from the ashes as a new being, a fusion of who he had been before and who he had become. You and I are like the phoenix. We too can reproduce ourselves from the shattered pieces of a difficult time. Wow. just wow. I know that each of us most definitely can be a phoenix reborn. Last book I want to present today is one I mentioned at the top of the episode, Shadow Work, A Spiritual Path to Healing and Integration. It's by Reverend Dr. Michelle Wadley. A deep and expansive exploration of one's shadow Let me see what do I have here. Okay. A deep and expansive exploration of one's shadow, those parts of self that we consciously hide from ourselves, or we've buried so deeply that we've lost our understanding of the whole itself, the limitations they brought to our life experience. It's without a doubt one of the most transformative journeys we could ever embark upon. And the beauty of this book is that it not only explains that journey, it provides practical, understandable explanations of the steps involved and how to take those steps, not only courageously, but safely. There are exercises to help you practice the techniques, the explanations of the obstacles you may encounter and how to address them. And quite honestly, it's a book you'll go back to again and again as you continue to learn and grow. So it's definitely, when we look at transformation and shadow work, it's definitely not a one and done kind of situation. It's a continual exploration. To quote Michelle, this book exists because it serves my way. My why. And my why is all about empowering others to live a life of freedom. You are part of my why. Sounds a lot like how I feel about my ministry. You are my why. I'd go so far as to say if you read only one book from all these various selections that I've shared, I'd recommend that it be this particular book. So these, let me see, here we go. This is a listing of all of the books that I had covered and the authors. If I were to list all of the books that have made a big difference for me in terms of healing and growth and transformation, we would be here for days and days and days. It's like I'm surrounded here in my office. I'm surrounded by books that have been monumental and instrumental for me. But I wanted to highlight these in particular because I think this is a great subset to work with. All right. So at this point, I just want to take a moment to thank Reverend Dr. Robert Brzezinski for his foresight and fortitude in creating and developing the New Thought Media Network. And I want to thank all of you who have pushed and prodded and encouraged me to put this show together. And most certainly, those of you who have had the courage and the generosity to share your journey with us. Folks, I've said this before. This is your show. So if you'd like to be a guest and share your journey from limiting beliefs to transformation and into triumph, let me know. Let me bring this up here. Take this down. Okay. You can reach me here at zodimiro@gmail.com. And I'm hoping that you understand that there is no transformation that's too small. There's no ability to put false beliefs aside and to grow into your truth that is unimportant. All right? It's all incredible. So, whether you have experienced something that is world-changing or world-changing for you, whatever it might be. But if it's elevated your life experience and brought you a sense of triumph, that's what we're looking for. So by all means, do let me know. And very importantly, if the concept of this show resonates with you, please let other people know about it. You can do that through your own social media and various discussions and such. We have access to the show both through Facebook and through YouTube. I'd recommend going through YouTube because it actually helps when YouTube sees that we're getting more traction. It helps bring up the importance of the show among all the many, many things that occur on YouTube. Speaking of many things occurring on YouTube, on the New Thought Media Network itself, we have over 40 hours of programming each week. All right. So go to YouTube, enter New Thought Media Network, and you'll see a whole slew of things there. All right. I look forward to seeing you next month. And we will return to our interview format, guaranteed. Matter of fact, my next guest is going to be someone that I've been trying to get on the show for quite a while. And I'm glad that I was able to get a hold of her. But in the meantime, by all means, do share this show on your social media feeds, because you never know how people can transform their lives. So, at this point, I would say, by all means, always remember that you are loved, you are love, and I will see you. Well, for those of you who go for the morning prayers, I will see you tomorrow morning. And for the rest of you, I'll hope to see you next month. The first of the month, the first Saturday of the month is when we air this show. So, by all means, love, love, love yourself, love the world. Namaste. Now, all I have to be able to do is figure out where I put my outro. Take care, folks.